Hey, and welcome back to Journals for Breakfast. This is Andrea, and I am so glad that you're here. This is part 2 of episode 5. Episode 5 focused on burnout for crafters, when we are burnt out on our crafts or our hobbies or our arts. I went through kind of 6 steps of sort of things that I journal about, write down, contemplate, deep dive into, to sort of break out of that crafter's burnout and figure out what's going on with me, why this thing that I love is suddenly burdensome or has lost its appeal in some way. And I shared with you guys in episode 5, part 1, all of those steps, and said I'll do a knitting version of that as part 2. So if you are a knitter or crocheter, fiber artist in any way, I think you'll find some info here, but I'm going to refer back to episode 5, part 1 frequently. So if you have not watched that one and are curious about those steps to addressing burnout, you might want to watch that one, then come back and join me on this one. But if you just love knitting podcasts like I do and will watch anybody talk about knitting anytime like I will, stick around. So, my podcast here is about journaling, and journaling. 2 things pulled me out of the worst burnout I've ever been in my life. And one was journaling, and the other was podcasts and YouTube. I found content on YouTube that just saved me. I don't know how else to put it. Makers sharing what they were making, content creators sharing their lifestyle and their inspiration, and it just became a home for me at a time that I was feeling like I was very alone and in a very dark place. And so I have loved the world of YouTube and podcasters. I found YouTube in the pandemic, so that's the time frame. And basically I watch Netflix and Hulu shows with my husband at night, but every other bit of viewing I ever do is on YouTube. And Patreon. I just love it. And so I am not a knitting podcaster by any means. So here we go. I'll do my best to share some knits with you. I'm going to share with you 2024, which has been my lowest production knit year probably ever. I have to admit that I'm in a bit of a rut. Is it a full burnout? Meh. But a lot of what I touched on in part 1, you'll hear exactly those little avenues that I went down that got me trapped here in 2024 with this sensation of kind of burnout and blah. So the very first thing is, let's talk about the beginning of 2024. January 1, 2024, I had agreed to a test knit. I mentioned yesterday that one of the steps we can take in sort of conquering and addressing our burnout, figuring out where it's coming from, one of the steps is, can you identify if you've set up any arbitrary deadlines that are somehow weighing you down or holding you back? Well, boom, test knit right out of the gate. It's the very first thing I agreed to. I typically am somebody who is deadline motivated. So deadlines don't usually shut me down. They don't usually weigh on me. They're why I get things done. We all fall on a different side of that fence. There is no right or wrong. It's just how your mind works. And for me, deadlines are very motivating. But here's what. January, y'all, I have finally come to understand that January 1 needs to be the beginning of 30 days of nothing, 30 days of rest, 30 days of no resolutions, no new workouts, no promises to myself about big changes, 30 days of just chilling out. I love fall and the holidays. I love them. So October 1 through New Year's Day is a delightful time for me, but it is also, as it is for so many of us, jam-packed. It is just full of so much stuff. And come January, that is the time for me to rest and recruit, not the time for me to start big new endeavors. I have figured out over time that I do so much better with a quiet January. Just ease into January, take it slow. It is such a mess that month. And then February, start the process of kind of building. And come March 1, spring is springing. I am sort of reborn, and all of my mojo starts to come back for so many things. So I've already made a note in my calendar for next year to chill out January 1 through 29, please. But this year I agreed to this test knit that started on January 1. Well, January 6th, we brought a new puppy home. which was delightful, but it also meant that our entire schedules just flipped on their heads. And any knitting time that I thought I had just went right out the window. The idea of having a ball of yarn out in my hands with this puppy was impossible. It was impossible. So now I have not only sort of the January fatigue, this random deadline that I've set up for myself. By the way, the deadline for the test knit was March 1. So we had 8 weeks. We had all January and February. January is slipping away. This puppy is taking over our lives. I'm not knitting a stitch, and now I'm starting to get like pressure. It's freaking me out. I get the sweater on the needles on February 1, and I power through, and I did get it done in plenty of time. And to be honest with you, side note, I adore the product. The sweater is gorgeous. I've test knit for this designer before, and I really love her aesthetic and her designs and the way she writes her patterns. I can't show you this particular test knit because it was a secret test knit. It's not released until November. But the minute that we can put that out there, it will be on my Instagram page, and it'll be, I'll wear it in a video or something to make sure that you can see it. It's so good. You guys are going to love doing it. It is actually a very fast knit. We did it with unspun. I carried a strand of mohair and a strand of unspun, so it knit up quickly. Anyway. So that's February. I get the test knit done under a lot of pressure, and so I've already started 2024 kind of fallen into these traps that I talked about in part 1 of this. You know, have I set up arbitrary deadlines and put random pressure on myself? The very next sweater I decide to do, here we go with the rules that I mentioned. I am working on stash diving. I've been trying very hard for the last literally maybe 4 years, you guys, like a long time, to burn through as much stash as I can. And yes, I have definitely added things in as well. I'm not on a straight up no buy, but I have been working hard to get through just a wild amount of stash. And so I finished the February deadline test knit in time. March 1, I cast on another sweater using all stash. Okay. I knit for the entire month of March, had a garment that had a full arm, had picked up for the second arm, full body. I've tried it on several times, and by the end of the month, I realized I absolutely hate this thing. It is too big. I picked the wrong size. Here's the thing, y'all. I was stash diving, right? So I'm forcing this yarn to do something that it doesn't want to do. This is not the yarn that the designer called for or used. Did I get gauge? Pretty close enough to guesstimate a size. Why was it too big? I just picked the wrong size. I just literally just went for a size that was one size too big. But also that yarn just did not look right in that pattern. So unflattering on me. It has nothing to do with the design, so I'm not even going to talk about what the sweater was because it's of no relevance. But I had set this arbitrary rule that I had to use stash, and you know, that made that knit really unsatisfying to me. It felt forced, like I was trying to make these two yarns be this thing. The final fabric was not amazing, and the sweater itself was garbage. I spent the entire month of March knitting it and the entire last day of March frogging it. And you know what? It was so tangled in places because I'd carried two yarns together. Some of it I just had to cut and throw away. Y'all. So this is my knitting of 2024. This is some bad mojo going down. I took a breath. I did what I do with most burnout, which is follow those same 6 steps, and I asked myself the same questions. And I decided that one thing that I needed was a little refresh. Enough with the stash diving, enough with trying to match up. And side note, can we just speak for a minute about stash diving? You know, there's always these videos out there, 10 things I wish I knew as a new knitter. Yeah, let me do a video right now called The One Thing I Wish I Knew as a New Knitter, which is stop buying yarn. Dang, if I had known then what I know now. You know, we're attracted to what is bright and shiny. It's pretty. I love this, by the way. I'll show you this. And I had filled up this room with yarns that I honestly didn't have any use for and didn't know how to use. And then I had to set this sort of mandate in my world because burnout number 1 is we're starting to feel guilty that we have these products we're not using and it's weighing down on us. Remember that from part 1. So I'm feeling guilty that I'm not using it. So now what I find myself forced to do is find patterns that I like and try to figure out how I'm going to match up yarns the designer did not use to go into that pattern. And yes, all good knitters can get some yarn together, get gauge, and go from there. But what I have discovered about the way that I knit and the final garments that I make and what I enjoy wearing is that when I do the pattern and use the yarn the designer asked for, I get a great result. When I do the pattern and stash dive, I get a marginal result. I mean, I've had okay results with stuff, but dang it, if I could do anything, it would be lessen this stash, because one, the burden of it gives me burnout, and two, matching back to all those patterns has been so much work. I can't even tell you the effort I had to put in to burn through as much stash as I did. So, okay, I decide on April 1, it's time for a refresh. So we go down to the local yarn shop, and that's what I did. I just bought some yarn. I bought Malabrigo Rios, so it's moderate. It was about 18 bucks a skein. That's not cheap yarn, but it wasn't designer yarn either. It wasn't $36 a skein. It's a super friendly denim blue. It seemed to me to be springy and bright at the time, and I took with me a book and made a deal with myself that whatever I bought had to be specific to a pattern in that book. And look what I picked. I picked seamless sweaters in 2 weeks. So I picked a collection of patterns that were gonna be fast knits. Even if I couldn't do it in 2 weeks, I bet I could do it in a month, right? 4 weeks. So it relieved that pressure of like a big project. It allowed me to do something I mentioned in part 1, which is refresh, bring in something to kickstart that hobby back again. So I refreshed my stash with something new and pretty for my eyes. And I bought specific to a pattern. And the pattern I chose was, I've marked it here for you. Let's find her pretty page, this guy here. And I picked this particular pattern because even though it's a cardigan, it was going to be knit flat, and I prefer in the round stockinette, quick. The sleeves were going to be in the round stockinette, and they were quick. It had this little bit of eyelet detail on it, some yarn over, so I knew those would be kind of engaging and a little bit fun to follow through. And it's a cardigan that doesn't require any buttonholes, right? It's just a loose front. I call it kind of a yoga cardigan. And also sizing wasn't gonna matter a lot. If I went up a size and made it one size too big in this design, that's not gonna matter. So you know what I mean? It felt like pressure-free, easy knit. So that's what I did. And that is this guy here. And I'll throw some photos up. But this is what I knit in April. So February, I knock out the test knit that I can't show you. March, I knit a complete sweater, and March 31st, ripped the entire thing out. And April, I go buy new yarn, no deadline, find a short pattern, and knit this little guy. And I do love them. I wear them a lot, actually. It's really lightweight. If you haven't worked with Malabrigo before and you're looking for just kind of a moderate yarn to play around with, it is lovely. Their dyes are really nice. They have really good colors. Lots of good colors. You can find them in lots of locations. So if you didn't buy enough, you'll be able to get enough going. Hey, nice, light, easy. Okay, that was, oh, also rolled cuff. Did she do a rolled cuff on hers, or did I make that up? Let's see. I do modifications, do you? Yeah, she did a ribbed cuff. I just did a rolled cuff. And because this is kind of a yoga sweater, you know, like around the house, I left it bracelet length so that it's out of my dishes. It's out of my knitting. Anyway, that's that. I might throw a picture up here too of me just standing there in it. But April, I got a new one done. So 2024 starts moving along. Now, technically, I have 2 sweaters done. I've got the test knit done, and I've completed this. We can't count the March sweater because he's now yarn again. And actually yarn that's in timeout. I'm like mad at that yarn. So I put it in a bag and shoved it in a corner. Okay. I liked this so much that I decided, because I'm struggling with little knitting mojo, instead of back to the stash dive, back to matching up patterns, trying to find gauge, I'm just gonna make the same darn sweater. So get this, I go to Hobby Lobby. I was there for something else, but I always check the yarn section there, and I never buy any yarn there, ever, ever, ever. And here it was, I bought some yarn. This is at Hobby Lobby. It was $6.29 a skein, and it's called Color Theory. It is a collaboration with this cool designer from Two of Wands. As soon as I saw the color, I'll show it to you, I thought, wait a minute, doesn't feel very big boxy. This is a really stylish color. I'll show it to you in a sec. And then I read the back, Alexandra Tavel, The creative power behind the blog Two of Wands has made lasting impression on the maker community with both her simple, sophisticated patterns and her ability to usher in a new generation of knitters and crocheters. Color Theory is the new companion to Hue Plus Me, which is her yarn line. And this is a Laine brand debut collaboration. What that means is it's inexpensive, y'all. It was $6.29 a ball. Look at the color. So slate gray, grayish blue, gray blue, slate blue. What a cool color. I'm really drawn to blues that are in between blues. And man, does that fit the bill. Isn't that gorgeous? Let me tell you what else this is. This is machine washable and dryer safe. I was gonna see, the color is called Stonewash, machine washable and machine dryable. $6.29, a sweater I've already done, so I made another one. But I changed this one up a little bit. Here's what I did with this one. This one, I made a few quick modifications. This knitted up at a slightly larger gauge, but I think I still did it at the exact same size. Yeah, I did. It's just a little bit bigger. You can see it fits my shoulders a little bit more loosely because it's a knit up at a little bit bigger gauge. But there's the little eyelet detail. There is a mistake in here. You can't see it. I won't point it out. Little eyelet detail. And I just went short sleeves. Short sleeves. And I did on this one put a little bit of ribbing there on that short sleeve. But same thing applies, you know. You end up with this just really loose. Doesn't really matter if it fits or not. It's just a hang front. And I end up wearing this all the time. This ended up being kind of, this is my pajama sweater. Do you have one of those? I end up wearing this with my pajamas a lot. Look at that color. I absolutely love that grayish blue. So pretty. So, okay, now we're moving along. That's another trick I'll say about Knitting Mojo. If you find something that you've enjoyed, just do it again. I know that concept of kind of being bored of kicking back to it, but the mindlessness of doing something a second time, your notes are all there, you know kind of exactly how you went, and I really love just whipping out a second one of these. So now I have a short sleeve that's a little bit looser, and I have the long sleeve, and I'm happy with both. I'm gonna say I used 5 skeins of this, but it might have been 4. But let's go expensive. Let's go high end and say 35 bucks for this sweater. Not bad for somebody who has been working on fighting through this stash forever. It just gave me a little, right? So there's that sweater. I love it. And again, seamless knits in 2 weeks. Somebody in a knitting group that I'm in mentioned to me that I might want to check for updates on that pattern on Ravelry, any erratas or anything like that, and there weren't any. And I followed it to the letter right out of the book, and it was excellent. So I highly recommend that one. A really fun knit, really easy to do. So that's April. May, no, let's see. April, May. March we ripped out. April is denim blue. May is slate blue. June, I bought more yarn. Okay, wait. Now listen, hear me out here. Do you see? I saw this yarn and just could not say no to it. And it is also really reasonable yarn. This is Cascade 220, and at my local yarn shop, it was a little under $12 a skein, like $11.85. And you could definitely find that on sale on online resources if you want to, but I love supporting my local yarn shop, and it was right there and in my hands. So I whipped out another sweater. Now this one that I did is called Sunshine Coast by Heidi Kiermaier. Sunshine Coast. I love this sweater. Again, just a little rolled sleeve. She does a rolled cuff, or hem, excuse me. I put ribbing in because I just wanted it to sit down flat. Also, her neckline, I think, ends right above these eyelets. See those picked up stitches? You can see them on the back there. I picked up stitches and added another half an inch so I could get a good roll down, but then also still see my, see those eyelets. Also, the back of this was too low on me. I don't love the back of my neck being exposed. I'm older. So So it's not a great look for me to have that exposed. And this was too low in the back. So that just brought that back up. She did do some short row shaping in it anyway. So it was going to sit higher anyway. I love this sweater, and it is just a big, inexpensive Cascade 220, fun, delicious sweater. I'll throw some photos in. And all of these projects are on my Ravelry page. Who am I on Ravelry? A chef on Ravelry. I'm a knitting chef on Instagram, or Journals for Breakfast. You can find me at any of them. This yarn made me happy. And so we talked yesterday, we talked in episode 5, part 1, about just refreshing, just bringing something in that brings a little joy to your knitting. And boy, did this pink do it. And now I still have this ball of this left. I might have 2, but I bet he ends up going in as a stripe element to something else. So there's that. Another thing about Knitting Mojo that I'll mention when it's kind of stale for me is that rather than buying yarn to make a complete project out of, sometimes what I'll do is just supplement what I have. So a big way that I got through a lot of my stash in the hardcore stash diving days of 2022 and 2023 is that I would, let's say I had, something, then I would buy something else and stripe it up. So adding something to what I already had to make that more appealing to me or more useful for a style that was going to work better for me. Often what happens is that what I have in stash is fingering or sock weight. And I feel like, look, if I'm going to burn through this stash, I need to up the weight on that. So if I carry it with a mohair, I can move it into sport or DK. It'll be a faster knit and I can just tear through that project a lot faster. So this is We Are Knitters Touch Me Mohair. I love this mohair. I wear this a lot. It's plenty soft for me, and I add it to a lot of projects. When I add a strand of this mohair to something else, I change the weight of it, of course. So again, it knits faster, but because the mohair is so lightweight itself, I don't actually change the weight of the final garment. Do you get what I'm saying? So I did a stash dive one time where I carried 2 sock weight yarns together. Holy cow, you guys, I'm gonna have to take that thing out. It weighs 4 pounds. It is so heavy, the 2 sock weights together. If I had done a sock weight and a mohair together, I still could have probably gotten that sport weight gauge, but the actual weight of the final garment wouldn't have been, 4 bricks. So this yarn, what I look for is 40% off. Sometimes it's 50% off. I've never paid more than 40% off though for it. And for 4th of July, they did a sale and I checked in, it was 25% off. So I checked right back out, not interested. This company will do 40% off all year long. Just sign up for their emails, pay attention, and check it out. Sometimes it's color specific. In their mohair line, 8 of them are 25% off and 2 colors are 40% off. If those colors support anything else that I have going on, then I will absolutely do it. And that was a really great way for me to burn through stash, adding a strand of mohair to all kinds of stuff. I stock up heavily on this neutral because he really goes with a lot of the colors that I have. But they have some pinks that are sort of in between pinks. Of course, they have black that just goes with black. You can find lots of different shades of this and then match it up pretty close to a fingering or sock weight yarn that you have. And then it's sort of a match and it isn't necessarily marled. I have an example of that here. This was a sock weight pink. Okay, so I think this was an Emma's in Himalayan Salt in sock weight, and I wanted to do a DK weight sweater. This is the Essential Top Down by Pearl Soho, which by the way, I'm about to knit this again. And the sock weight wasn't big enough for what I wanted to do gauge wise, so I added a strand of a sort of dusty pink from We Are Knitters. It might have been called Salmon or something like that, and it just blended right in. It doesn't give you a marled look at all. That is coffee. It doesn't give you a marled look to it whatsoever. Although if you like a marled look, you could definitely do a light with a dark and bring those together. But anyway, so adding, buying something to refresh the stash, to kickstart a project, to make the yarn a heavier gauge, to be more appealing to knit, to get that project out faster. For me, the key is getting things finished when I'm in a burnout. If I can get a project done and in my hands, it reinvigorates me to move on to the next thing. So 2-week knits, finding projects that were meant to be short knits, up the gauge of things, you know, make sure you're working at the very minimum in DK weight so you can move stuff through quickly. Those are some of my tips as well. And then the other thing I'll say about knitting burnout and how I kind of kickstart my mojo, this is a little controversial for the knitters out there, but I knit swatches. And I mean, I knit swatches that have no purpose. So I've got these two, this beautiful Issair mohair that I bought because it's a dusty pink, and obviously that's what I'm just drawn to. And then I have this gorgeous Issair, but look at the weight on that. I mean, this is definitely lace or fingering, and it is wool and flax, 80% wool, 20% flax. So I knit up a swatch holding these two together, and the pink does kind of marl in this a bit, but this is already so sort of tweedy and marled that adding the little hint of pink in it, it just gave it kind of a pink halo. And then every once in a while you could see this sort of striation of sort of pink in there. It was pretty. And the gauge that I got on it, okay, why do I swatch when I don't have a plan? Because at least I'm knitting. There's no pressure. There's no requirement to do anything with this. Pick up a pair of needles, go sit down and watch Netflix with my husband, grab a skein of yarn or 2 skeins of yarn and just start knitting and see what happens. I can rip them back out. I knit these into swatches and then pulled that swatch out, wound them back up and stuck them right back in their sleeves. Sometimes I'll hang on to a swatch. If it's something that I think, ooh, that gauge was really good, I definitely want to hang on to that, and then I'll knit that up down the road. But usually I'm just swatching for the sake of moving my hands, doing a little bit of knitting without knitting, and getting my mojo back that way. But once I do it, I'll jot down the information so I know what gauge I got on it with that needle. And then something might pop up down the road and I can say, hey, Stash Dive, I actually already know I've got something that'll fly for that. And that's exactly what happened. Just randomly, I knit this up to see what it would look like if I held two things together. And then I was going through my notebook of pullover patterns. I have a lot that are printed out and some are on Ravelry. And sure enough, this little guy showed up. See how he's just a really loose, slouchy V-neck? And that is, what is the name of that pattern? Where is that? There it is. It's a Barocco pattern, and it's Odile. Odile? The gauge is 24 stitches and 32 rows. It's exactly the gauge I got on this swatch. Exactly. I think that's what I'm gonna make with it. I'm just gonna double check that this is a top down, not a bottom up. I have bottom up issues. They just don't work for me. I'm not interested in those. So as long as this is top down, that's where I'll go with it. But if nothing else, I knitted it up. I figured out that I do like these two together. This will definitely work as a project. And I could go with something that gauge isn't specific, like a ranunculus or even a love note, something that gives you a little bit more room to play with. But I think the love note does carry a fingering and a mohair together too. So there you go. And I did this on a really small needle and got that 24 gauge. So if I needed to move that a bit, I could go up a needle size or two to shift that out slightly. So swatching when you don't really know what you're making, but you just want to put your hands on your yarn. I think, as I mentioned yesterday, cleaning up the craft room, and I just rearrange this board every once in a while to just say, what colors are speaking most to me right now? What am I most excited about trying to get on my needles? And that's really helpful too. The other thing I mentioned is small projects. That's what the swatches are. They're small projects. And the last thing I'll say is I mentioned just buying a book about something. I was doing a stash cleanup recently on this board and kind of putting my hands on everything that's there and sort of seeing. And by the way, no, y'all, that is not the whole stash. There's another board just like that in this corner over here that's got as much yarn on it. And I've got some buckets with project yarns going. I came across these two in the stash dive. I was looking at that board up there and I bought these with purpose. I had a reason for them when I bought them. and have over time just come to talk myself out of it. They're not going to work for what I thought they would, and they are woolly as all get out, like crunch, crunch, crunch. You know that sweater that you found like in your dad's closet in the 70s? It was from the 70s. You found it in the 80s and started wearing it because it was kind of hip for the fact that it was so retro, but that thing was so crunchy. It's that crunchy 70s retro sweater. So I'm standing there holding these yarns and thought, I know what I want to do with them. I want to make a rug. So I ordered a book. I didn't order a loom. I ordered a book. The first thing that I did was order a book. It's called Weaving Big on a Little Loom. And the concept is that if you have a limited loom, tabletop, so 10 inch or 16 inch, here are some cool projects you can do by making that fabric and bringing it together, which is exactly how I pieced together a rug for this room. And man, when I realized what I could do with 10 inches or 16 inches and start making fabrics, boom, half my stash just went, I found a use. It's done. I found it. I am going to weave up a lot of this stuff. So the yarn shop that I like in Ormond Beach, which is about an hour for me, does sell looms. And so I've scheduled an appointment with her to go see their looms, talk a little bit about it, make sure this is something I want to get involved in. I feel pretty sure that I do. And in the meanwhile, rather than actually knitting, rather than actually weaving, I'm just reading about it, learning about how to make a houndstooth pattern, you know, changing your yarn partway through. See, it's darker here and lighter here. I want to get that little method figured out, and then ways to piece together pieces that you make to turn them into other items. So I'm reading about it, and I think that's another nice way to break out of a rut in knitting. One, I watch knitting podcasts. If I'm not going to knit, watch someone else knit. What are they doing? It often inspires me to go check out what I've got going on in my own stash. But buy a book that inspires something else, right? Another part of the craft. Certainly you can buy pattern books too. I will say this about buying patterns when I'm in a knitting rut though. I'm just going to share this because here we are and I'm babbling on. When I'm in a bit of a knitting rut or a little bit burnt out on knitting, I've discovered that buying patterns is usually a mistake for me. Because I buy them, I print them, and immediately catch something about it that makes me not want to do it. Dang it, I didn't look through this and it's bottom up. File it away. I already bought it and printed it. It's mine. I buy it, I print it, I look at it. Dang it, I didn't realize this, but she's doing Intarsia to create that front pattern. I'm not interested in that right now. Whatever it may be. Nothing against Intarsia or bottom up. But you get what I'm saying? And I'll go through a little spell where I will just like buy, print. No. I'm in a rut. I shouldn't be buying patterns anyway. So buying things about knitting helps me out too. This is one I got from Laine Publishing, which is embroidery on knits. So maybe I don't have the mojo to knit another whole project, but maybe this little scar here has been driving me crazy for the 3 years I've been wearing this sweater. And maybe I'll hide it with some embroidery. So you know what I mean? Like refresh the knits you've already made with some new ideas around the craft that aren't specific to being just another pattern. That can really recharge me and get me going. Check out episode 1 if what's really weighing you down is guilt or deadlines. Let's journal through that, get through that, and relieve ourselves of that. And then from there, start taking some actions. Clean up the craft space, rearrange the stash. I love donating yarns. Often I go through and realize that, and I've done that enough purging on that. I don't think I have anything right now that would fall into that category, but eventually something that's sat here staring at me long enough, I will ultimately say, why don't you hand this to someone who might be able to find a great use for it, because that someone apparently isn't me at this point. I don't mind handing it off. Buy a little something to refresh what you already have going. You know, it's not buying an entire sweater's worth of new yarn. It is buying support yarn. That's what we're going to call it, support yarn. It will support the stash that you already have. You have 3 skeins of worsted that you love, but you know you can't get a sweater out of it. Can you buy 2 skeins and turn it into a striped sweater just with the addition of 2 skeins, right? So support yarn purchases. I give you permission right here, right now. I might name this video, you have my permission to buy support yarn. So yeah, adding into the stash in that way. Look for shorter projects, and then watch out with those arbitrary deadlines. If you've stepped into a test knit that you really realize that that deadline is not motivating you, it's shutting you down, let the designer know. If you have a knit group, maybe you could ask somebody in your knit group if they're interested in picking it up where you left off. See if you can step out of that gracefully. And I have heard some knitters mention that they've stepped out of a test knit and then bought maybe 2 of that designer's patterns as an apology and thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for considering me. I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to complete this as I thought that I would, but I've also purchased 2 of your patterns for my library. Right? I don't know. So see if you can step out of that arbitrary deadline is what I would say, and be careful about setting up deadlines for yourself if they don't motivate you. I am enjoying these kind of slower month-long knits. A 2-week sweater, honestly, if I were knitting with any regular speed, would truly take me 2 weeks. But I'm knitting so very little, just, maybe 45 minutes in the evening by the time all is said and done. And so a sweater, basic top-down sweater, is taking me about 4 weeks, but that's fine. It's just the pace where I am right now. I will say too that I'm careful about the way that I knit, and I want to mention this last little thing. It might be time to stop knitting and start looking at the knits that you've made. Really do a reevaluation of them. Stack them up. When I stack up the knits that I've made right now, I am confident that what I'm knitting supports my wardrobe and my style and my lifestyle. I do have a stack of knits that need to be ripped out because they don't do those things. They don't support my style, they don't support my lifestyle, or there was something flawed with them to begin with, and I thought that I could carry on and move past it and I wouldn't care or something like that, and ultimately I do care. Also, I've been knitting for a while. I've outgrown some of my knits. They just don't fit anymore. And so last year what I did was just give away knits that had just gotten too small for me. But this is a scarf that I absolutely adore, and you'll probably see this on me some. It's technically black, not navy. But when I hang this by my knits, it is very clear that I am working within a color palette that supports what I love. Knitting is fun, yarn is fun, and sometimes we find ourselves making a project that then in the end is just not supporting us in any way. Are those weighing you down? So maybe one of the steps for this is in your cleanup, in your clean out, to pull out all of your knits and just take a look. Is it time to say goodbye to some? Do you want to repurpose that yarn by just frogging them out? Do you want to donate that sweater to some community, or do you want to gift the sweater to someone whose style it would work for, or you recognize that that color scheme is really good for them? It's a very freeing feeling to say goodbye to the knits that just aren't supporting us anymore. You guys do that with your regular closet too. You don't wear the same shirt for 30 years, at some point. You may still wear button downs, but you've changed the brand or the size or the color scheme. Don't be afraid to give away those knits. Somebody will love them. Or repurpose the yarn, buy a loom, and weave it into a rug. I will probably do another knitting video down the road on exactly that. I have been pulling knits that need to be frogged, and so I've been thinking I'll put together a video for you guys where I just talk about that process, how I came to decide it was time to let these things go, and why I think the yarn is worth the frogging process, that I can use it for something else down the road. So it looks like I'm getting invaded by a puppy here who wants to go outside. So if you take a look at episode 5, part 1, all the things I just talked about are very clearly listed in 6 steps of how we get through it. But cleaning up the craft space, putting your hands on, buying some support yarn or something to refresh the hobby, making sure that you are doing things that are bringing you joy and that you will love, looking for short-term projects that just aren't a huge investment in time, making sure you're working on a gauge that is gonna let you get through a project very quickly. All of that stuff is gonna make a big difference to you too. So I hope you find that helpful. This is episode 5, part 2. burnout in our crafts, how we get through it. Please share with me any ideas you have about how you get your knitting mojo back when it's slipping away, and knit on. Don't be afraid of the swatch. Knit a few swatches of your stuff and see what you find. You never know. And by the way, I bought a yarn recently that I thought was going to be amazing, and I knit it up and I just hated it as a material for a blouse. Like, I just thought, I will never buy a shirt. I would never ever buy a shirt that looked like this. What am I doing? So I'm going to weave it. I'm going to turn it into material that I'm going to hopefully turn into some market bags that I think will be nice gifts for friends. I think it will be very beautiful in that setup. It's a ribbon yarn. So while I've seen clothing made out of that kind of thing, it's not the sort of thing that I tend to gravitate towards or buy. I don't know. You know, it was sparkly in the window and it caught my attention. And speaking of refreshing, one last thing. Treat yourself now and then. After all of those 2024 projects, getting through the test knit, I have done some stash diving. It was time to refresh. So I picked up a gorgeous project bag. This is Sandy by the Lakeside. I'll link her below. And y'all, for the knitters who are wondering if all I do is buy support stash or inexpensive yarn, after all of those great inexpensive projects, it was time to treat myself. And look what I picked up. So this is Chelsea Luxe. I have a project on my Ravelry page, which is the Gardy Cardi, which is made entirely out of Chelsea's 2022 Advent. So if you're curious about that, you can take a look. I love that cardigan. But look at this beautiful, and here's what, y'all, I was just scrolling one day, looking at the stories, looking at the reels, and she mentioned she had a pop-up sale. So I actually got this at a really, really great price. It was on sale, exactly the kind of subtle speckling that I adore. And so remember I mentioned in the beginning that Essential Top-Down sweater by Pearl Soho, that another one's coming. That's what I'm going to make out of this. And I have a feeling I'm going to end up with enough of this left that it will be the stripe in a striped sweater. I've got some kind of dusty mauve that I think will be really pretty as the main color, and whatever's left of this will end up be the striping in that. So those are two projects coming out of some sale yarn that refreshed my stash, and a gorgeous new project bag that refreshed my heart and mind and soul. That's it. Happy knitting. Please join me for more journaling and let me know how you get out of your knitting mojo, what projects you're up to, and I'll do my best to list all the links of this in the description. Okay, you guys, we'll see you for episode 6 on Journals for Breakfast, where I'll be sharing more about my journaling. Have a great day.